Here's something that's happened to all of us. You walk into a store because your printer just ran out of ink. You grab the replacement cartridges, $60, and then you look one shelf over and there's a brand new printer, full machine, Wi-Fi, everything set up, $49, and your brain just breaks. How is the ink more expensive than the entire machine? Here's the thing, it's not a mistake. It's not a pricing glitch. It's one of the most brilliantly engineered business traps in modern history. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because this same model, the exact same psychological trick, is already running on your morning coffee, your gaming console, and every subscription you pay for right now. The next 19 minutes are going to change the way you think about every purchase you make. Let's get into it.
Picture this. You're walking down the electronics aisle of a big box store.
I know this feeling well.
Yeah, because your printer at home just flashed that dreaded low ink warning.
The absolute worst.
It really is. So you find the replacement cartridges, and you realize, standing right there in the aisle, that buying those little plastic squares of liquid is somehow going to cost you like $60.
Yep.
Meanwhile, a brand new, fully assembled printer is sitting just one shelf over with a bright yellow sticker that says $49.
It's completely wild when you see it in person.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling from this genuinely fascinating script that breaks down the economics of printing. And our mission today is to decode this totally absurd everyday retail experience.
Which is something I think everyone has experienced at least once, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to reveal the brilliant, completely hidden business model operating right behind those price tags. Because initially, when you see a whole machine priced lower than its own fuel, it feels like a pricing glitch.
Yeah, or a scam.
Exactly, a scam. You just assume someone at the corporate office messed up the inventory system, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because before we get to the really big tech giants, we kind of have to look at our own blind spots here.
Which are significant, by the way.
Right. So why do you and I look at a $49 printer, which is, a complex machine with moving parts, lasers, Wi-Fi chips, molded plastic, and think, wow, what a steal?
Instead of immediately asking what the catch is?
Exactly. Why does our logic just completely fail us the moment we see that little yellow sticker?
Well, the failure happens because of a very specific psychological phenomenon, which is called the apparent cost bias.
Apparent cost bias.
Yeah. Human brains are just incredibly well-wired to focus on immediate, visible numbers. We prioritize the friction that is literally directly in front of us.
So whatever's happening right now, in this second.
Right. When you see a price tag slapped on a box in big, bold, red numbers, your brain registers that as the entirety of the transaction. You're judging the item by the financial pain it causes you at that exact moment of purchase.
And we just, completely ignore the math of what that device is going to cost over the next 5 years.
Completely.
The brain says, great deal today. It doesn't pause to calculate, wait, how many black and white documents will I need to print by 2029? And what is the cumulative cost of that habit?
Exactly, because those future costs are invisible, right?
Yeah.
And they're scattered in small increments across a timeline.
Yeah.
Cognitive science actually shows that we heavily discount future pain compared to immediate savings. And, the company selling you that device, they know you won't do the long-term math.
Of course they do.
So they've engineered the entire pricing structure around your cognitive bias.
It's like being offered a practically free car, right?
Yeah.
Like a beautiful, shiny new vehicle delivered straight to your driveway. But the hidden catch is that you are legally required to buy the dealership's specific, highly marked up gasoline for the rest of your life.
That analogy captures the dynamic perfectly.
It's wild. But how did this even start? How did this devious model become the standard?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the historical hurdle these companies faced. If we go back to the 1980s and 90s, printer manufacturers had a massive problem.
Right, because early tech was so expensive.
Oh, incredibly. The internal components of those early printers cost hundreds of dollars just to manufacture.
Wow.
So when a basic home printer costs $400 at retail, the barrier to entry is just simply too high for the average home or a small office or a school. It becomes a major capital investment.
Which means the sales volume would inherently hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
You just can't reach mass market penetration if your product requires a family to dip into their savings account.
Exactly. So the manufacturers had to figure out a way to get the hardware into the house without causing sticker shock. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the solution they landed on was actually borrowed from a much older playbook.
Okay, what playbook?
It's famously known as the razor and blade model.
Oh, right. Gillette, right.
Yep. Pioneered by King Camp Gillette at the turn of the 20th century. Gillette realized that men hated the cumbersome process of sharpening straight razors, so he created a stamped steel blade that was incredibly cheap to produce.
Right, the disposable ones.
Yeah, but the genius wasn't the blade itself, it was the pricing strategy. Give the razor handle away for next to nothing.
Because the handle is useless on its own.
Exactly. It's simply a platform to guarantee a lifetime of consumable blade purchases.
Wow. So Gillette basically shifted the paradigm from buying a durable good to buying a consumable habit.
That's exactly what he did.
So when you're standing in that electronics store, grabbing that cheap printer, you think you're buying a tool. But in reality, you've just signed a disguised subscription. You've walked right into the machine.
You've crossed a threshold without even realizing a door closed behind you. The hardware is really just the delivery mechanism for the actual product.
Which is the ink.
Okay, I need to stop it right there, because that line is the key to this entire video. The hardware is just the delivery mechanism. The printer isn't the product. The ink is. And that one shift in perspective changes everything. Here's the number that makes it real. A standard ink cartridge costs you around $15 to $20 at the store. It prints about 200 pages. When you do the math per liter, and they're about to break this down, printer ink costs roughly $2,000 per liter. That's not a typo, $2,000. For comparison, a high-end bottle of champagne runs about $30 a liter. So why is the printer so cheap? Because the manufacturer is actually losing money on it, on purpose. It's called a loss leader. The hardware is bait. Once it's sitting on your desk, you're locked into buying their ink for the lifetime of that machine. And what we're about to get into next is how this exact same model, same psychology, same trap, is sitting in your kitchen, your living room, and your pocket right now. If you're already thinking, how do I protect myself from this? Stick around. I cover that in my conclusion. And if you're finding this valuable, a like takes 2 seconds and genuinely helps the channel. All right, back to it.
Right, the fluid inside those little plastic cartridges.
Yeah. Man. Okay, that brings us to the sheer math of this fluid, which the sources we're looking at today break down in a way that is genuinely staggering.
It really is shocking when you see the numbers.
Let's look at exactly how much money is being made later on that disguised subscription. So a standard ink cartridge costs you about $15 to $20 at the store.
Right.
And according to the technical breakdowns in our sources, that cartridge lasts at best for about 200 pages of printing.
And see, $15 doesn't trigger our internal alarm bells because it's a relatively small, manageable number, you know.
Right. It just feels like buying lunch.
Exactly. But you have to break down the volume to see the actual financial maneuver taking place.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. When you actually do the math on that $15 to $20 for that incredibly tiny volume of liquid inside the cartridge, the cost per liter of printer ink comes out to roughly $2,000. $2,000 for a single liter. Just to make this relatable to you listening, think about a premium bottle of champagne, a really nice vintage you'd bring to a wedding.
Oh, sure.
That only costs about $30 or $40 a liter.
Yeah.
Printer ink is literally one of the most expensive liquids on planet Earth.
It actually rivals the cost of certain liquid perfumes and really high-end medical fluids. It's crazy.
Pigmented water.
Yeah, pigmented water. And to justify charging $2,000 a liter for it, the manufacturers rely entirely on the financial concept of the loss leader.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the $49 printer isn't just cheap, it is actively losing money for the company. The manufacturer is taking a financial hit, or, you know, at best, they're just breaking even on the manufacturing, shipping, and retail shelving costs when you scan that box at the register.
So the machine is quite literally just bait.
Just bait. The goal of the hardware division isn't to generate profit at all.
Which is so counterintuitive.
Yeah. Right, but the sole goal is to drag you inside the brand's ecosystem. Once that physical machine is sitting on your desk and it's communicating with your home Wi-Fi, you have been successfully acquired as a node in their revenue network.
Okay, but this is where I have to push back a little bit.
Sure.
If the margins on printer ink are that astronomical, basic capitalism dictates that a disruptor should swoop in, right?
Who would think so, yeah.
Like someone should build a decent, high-quality printer, sell it for a fair price, say, I don't know, $150, and then just sell replacement ink at cost, completely undercutting the $2,000 a liter champagne ink.
Right.
Why hasn't the free market destroyed this model?
Because the incumbent companies anticipated that exact free market threat. They didn't just build a product, They built a fortress.
A fortress?
Yeah, and they used intellectual property to build the walls. You can't just take that cheap printer home and slide in a generic third-party cartridge because the manufacturers practice something called lock-in by constraint.
Lock-in by constraint, meaning it's not just a physical plastic shape that only fits their specific machine.
Oh, it goes far beyond the physical shape. They engineer their own proprietary formats, and they actually embed microscopic electronic chips directly into the ink cartridges.
Wait, there are microchips in the plastic ink squares?
Yes. These chips act like digital rights management, or DRM, for a physical object.
That's insane.
Right. When you slide a new cartridge into the printer, it performs this sort of cryptographic handshake with the printer's motherboard.
A handshake.
Yeah, and if the cartridge cannot produce the correct proprietary digital signature, the printer's firmware physically disables the printhead. The machine just simply plays dead, even if the generic cartridge is perfectly full of really high-quality ink.
Wait. So we aren't repeatedly buying from these brands because they provide the best customer experience.
Nope.
We're buying from them because we're trapped in an artificial cage engineered by the manufacturer.
Exactly. The cage is built out of patents and proprietary microchips. It is a ruthlessly effective customer retention strategy.
It sounds almost hostile.
Well, historically, you only saw this kind of aggressive lock-in in business-to-business or B2B sales.
Okay, like what?
Think of a massive corporation buying proprietary enterprise software. Once all their data is in the system, they can't easily switch out of it without breaking their entire workflow, right?
Right, the switching costs are just way too high.
Precisely. Printer companies took that aggressive B2B retention strategy and successfully applied it to everyday mass-market consumers.
Because the cage is locked tight, they essentially have a localized monopoly right there on your desk.
Yeah.
They can charge literally whatever they want for the ink.
And they do.
Mm.
Since you have zero alternatives once the printer is on your desk, the gross profit margins on printing consumables, the ink and the toner, they routinely exceed 70 to 80%.
70 to 80% margin. I mean, that is astronomical for a physical retail product that actually has to be manufactured, put on a cargo ship, and stocked on a physical retail shelf.
It really is. The physical printer is just the door. The invisible ink is the silent financial engine running in the background. And what's fascinating here is that this was essentially hardware as a service decades before the tech industry ever coined the term SaaS.
Right, software as a service.
Exactly.
We all know the SaaS model today. You pay a monthly recurring fee for your email marketing tool, your CRM, or your cloud storage. The metrics for that are universally understood now.
Yeah, everyone gets SaaS.
But these printer companies were running a SaaS playbook using physical plastic and metal in the 1990s.
Because the underlying financial principle is identical, Heavily discount the entry point to remove all friction and then build a predictable pipeline of recurring revenue.
Wall Street must love that.
Oh, Wall Street values this model above almost anything else. Investors absolutely hate the treadmill effect of traditional hardware.
The treadmill effect.
Yeah, like if you sell a customer a $500 television, you get a nice spike in revenue today, right?
Sure.
But tomorrow you wake up at zero and have to go find a brand new customer all over again. You're constantly on a treadmill. But with the loss leader printer model, you know that the customer you acquire today will be forced to buy $80 of ink from you every single year for the operational life of that machine.
So if I'm analyzing this like an investor, the money they lose on the cheap printer is basically just their customer acquisition cost.
Exactly, their CAC.
Right, their CAC.
The CAC is completely baked into the hardware subsidy. They paid the cost to win you over by taking a $30 loss on the printer up front.
Wow.
But from the moment you run that very first setup alignment page, the financial math flips. Every subsequent cartridge you buy is nearly pure profit, and it pays back that initial CAC within the first few months.
I am genuinely marveling at the sheer brilliance and honestly the deviousness of this trap.
It's very clever.
Which makes me wonder just how big this hidden economy actually is. Like when you zoom out, what is the global scale of this empire?
Well, to grasp the scale, you can just look at a giant like HP. According to the source material, HP regularly generates more than 50% of its total operating profits from printing consumables alone.
Wait, more than half of their profit just from the ink and toner?
It's from the fluids and powders, yeah. And keep in mind, this is a company with annual revenues in the tens of billions of dollars. They sell laptops, servers, huge enterprise solutions.
Right.
Yet half the actual profit comes from the consumables. That $49 printer isn't a piece of electronics. It is a financial tunnel that guarantees cash flow for years.
So what does this all mean? Specifically for you, the person listening to this right now.
Yeah, how does it affect you?
Exactly. Where else are you stepping into these financial tunnels without realizing it? Because if this mathematical formula works so beautifully for printer companies, there's no way they're the only ones exploiting it.
Oh, not even close. The ink cartridge was really just the canary in the coal mine. It gave birth to an entire modern economy of bait-and-hook systems.
Okay, so where else do we see this?
Look around your house right now. Gaming consoles are the classic modern equivalent.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, PlayStations and Xboxes are frequently sold below their actual manufacturing cost, especially at the launch of a new generation.
Really?
Yeah, the companies willingly absorb billions in hardware losses.
Because they know the hardware is just a Trojan horse.
Exactly.
Once it's plugged into your television, you have to buy the $60 games. And more importantly, you have to pay the monthly subscription fee just to play online with your friends.
Right. The profits flow entirely from the software licensing and the digital network, not the plastic box itself.
Wow.
And we see the exact same architecture in the kitchen, too.
Wait, in the kitchen?
Pod coffee machines.
Oh.
They operate on identical logic. The brewing machine is relatively cheap, but you are locked into buying their specific aluminum or plastic pods for $1 a cup.
That makes so much sense.
In many cases, those machines even have optical scanners to read barcodes on the pods.
You're kidding.
No! They will literally refuse to brew if you try to use an unauthorized third-party coffee brand.
It's the microchip DRM from the ink cartridge, literally applied to your morning coffee.
Exactly. Electric razors with their expensive replacement heads do this. Smartphones do this.
Oh, phones for sure.
The telecommunications carriers hand you a $1,000 supercomputer for free, or for a massive discount, but you sign a contract paying them $100 a month for data access over the next 2 years.
The physical items change, but the invisible architecture remains exactly the same.
Yep. And in recent years, tech companies have actually managed to refine this model into its purest, most frictionless form.
Which is what?
The pure digital subscription.
Ah. Because with a physical product, like a printer or a coffee pod, there's still some friction.
Right.
They still have to manufacture the ink, put it in plastic, ship it in a truck, cross the ocean to a retail store. But with pure digital software, the marginal cost of reproducing the product is literally zero.
Zero. Think about the tools you use every day. Adobe Creative Cloud, Microsoft 365, Spotify, Netflix.
Yeah, we all use those.
The entry point is incredibly cheap, sometimes entirely free. You download the app with zero financial friction, you start the 30-day free trial.
But then the psychological lock-in begins.
Exactly. Your creative work lives inside their proprietary file formats. Your curated playlists and listening algorithms live inside Spotify. Your daily habits and routines become fundamentally built around their ecosystem.
So you still get locked in by constraint, but it's no longer a physical microchip stopping you. It's a psychological and logistical constraint.
Right, the cost of leaving just becomes far too high. You don't want to go through the pain of migrating years of data. You don't want to spend weeks learning a new user interface. And you don't want to lose your customized algorithms.
Yeah, nobody wants to deal with that.
By removing the physical hardware entirely, digital SaaS companies achieve a level of predictable, recurring revenue that the physical product makers of the 1990s could only dream of.
It's incredible how we evolved from a physical bottle of printer ink to completely invisible digital subscriptions, while the underlying psychological trick,
The apparent cost bias.
right, the apparent cost bias that stayed exactly the same. We still just look at the upfront price. We look at a software tool and say, oh, $10 a month. Sure, that's incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
Completely ignoring the mathematical reality that over a decade, we just paid $1,200 to rent access to music or software that we don't actually own.
We have been culturally trained to accept these financial tunnels as the default mechanism of modern consumption.
We really have.
We prioritize the convenience of a low entry point over the long-term sovereignty of owning our tools outright.
So to bring this all together, the next time you're walking down that aisle and you see that $49 printer sitting on a store shelf, you shouldn't view it as a piece of electronics anymore.
Yeah.
It is not a product. It's an invitation.
It is a carefully engineered threshold designed to acquire you as a lifetime node in a recurring revenue network.
And the real question isn't whether or not it's a scam. We know it's not a glitch. It's a highly functional, entirely legal business model that powers the modern economy.
Yeah.
The question is, now that you know exactly how the mechanism works, now that you can see the invisible price tag stretching 5 years into the future and understand the DRM microchips waiting inside the box, are you still going to hit print?
And that leads to a much larger, perhaps more provocative thought to leave you with today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this hardware as a service and SaaS model has successfully trapped everything from our morning coffee pods to our digital software, simply because our habits and our data live inside them,
Yeah.
are we reaching a point where we no longer truly own any of the tools in our lives?
Wow. It fundamentally changes what the word buying means today.
Right. If our entire daily routine, how we work, how we relax, how we communicate, is built on subsidized entry points and disguised lifetime subscriptions, are we slowly, willingly trading away the very concept of ownership just for the convenience of a cheap starting price?
That is something to seriously think about the next time you click subscribe or grab a seemingly cheap box off a retail shelf. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden economics of the things we use every day. Until next time, keep looking past the price tag.
Are we slowly trading away the very concept of ownership? That's the question they leave us with. And honestly, I think we already have. We just didn't notice it happening. Think about your own life for a second. What do you actually own? Your music lives on Spotify. Stop paying, it's gone. Your creative files are locked in Adobe's format. Switching is a nightmare. Your phone was free, but you're paying $80 a month for 2 years. Your console was cheaper than expected, but the games and the online subscription, those never stop. This isn't just about printers anymore. The razor and blade model is the invisible architecture of the modern economy, and we've been trained to see it as normal. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know, what's the financial tunnel in your life that you feel like you can't get out of? A subscription you're locked into, a device that forces you back, an ecosystem you can't leave? Drop it in the comments. I read everything, and if you want me to keep pulling back the curtain on these hidden economic models, banks, telecoms, insurance, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is about. See you in the next one.